Hi, it's me, the storyteller. Thank you for joining me. Most of my stories on this channel are based on actual events, and some aren't. I'll let you decide if this story is fiction, or if it's not. He did not take supplies. He did not say goodbye. He simply ran. That is the story investigators were told. But nearly everything about what happened next, and what came before, refuses to sit neatly inside that explanation. Idaho County is vast. Nearly 8,500 square miles of steep terrain, deep canyons, dense forest, and federally managed wilderness. In many places, there is no cell service, no cameras, no quick way out. Four-wheel drive is not a luxury there. It's a requirement. The land draws hunters, hikers, and adventurers. It also swallows people. On October 5th, 2018, a 12-person television production crew drove deep into that wilderness to film an episode of a reality series called Gold Rush, Dave Turin's Lost Mine. The shoot took place near an abandoned mine outside the town of Elk City, Idaho, a remote area even by Idaho standards. By the end of the day, 11 members of that crew would return to their motel in Grangeville. One would not. 26-year-old Terrence Woods Jr. was born and raised in Prince George's County, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. From an early age, he showed a restlessness, not recklessness, but curiosity. He wanted to see the world, understand it, question it. As a middle school student, he once wrote a letter to President George W. Bush, criticizing U.S. involvement in overseas conflicts. It was thoughtful, articulate, and serious enough that his father remembers joking they wouldn't believe a kid had written it. That seriousness stayed with him. Terrence studied broadcast journalism at the University of Maryland, where he quickly stood out. Professors described him as driven, focused, and unusually prepared. He arrived early, stayed late, asked questions long after class ended. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing competence. His goal was clear: international journalism, big stories, border-crossing work. After earning his bachelor's degree in 2013, Terrence moved to London. There, he completed a master's degree in international relations and began working as a freelance production assistant in television. The work was demanding. The pay was modest. The hours were long. But Terrence thrived. He worked on high-profile productions, including The Voice UK. He traveled extensively: France, Germany, Turkey, often bringing home small souvenirs for his father. Shot glasses from every country. Proof of movement, proof of momentum. Colleagues and supervisors consistently praised him. Descriptions repeated themselves: reliable, calm under pressure, proactive, professional. In an industry where reputation is currency, Terrence's reputation was strong. By mid-2018, after 5 years abroad, Terrence decided to return home to Maryland. Not because he failed, but because he felt that chapter had run its course. He was ready to build the next one closer to family. Just weeks after returning, his former employer, Raw TV, a UK-based production company, reached out. They were filming in the western United States and needed crew. The project would involve several weeks on location. Terrence accepted. On September 30th, 2018, his father dropped him off at Reagan National Airport. They hugged, they joked. Terrence boarded his flight. That moment would burn itself into his father's memory. Terrence's itinerary took him first to Missoula, Montana, where the crew assembled. His father heard from him that day, confirmation that he had arrived safely. Then, for several days, silence. That alone was not unusual. Terrence had worked remote shoots before. On October 4th, the crew traveled from Montana to Grangeville, Idaho. That night, Terrence texted his father. He'd arrived at the hotel. Just before midnight, nearly 3 a.m. on the East Coast, Terrence called. The conversation was brief, casual. He said he was okay. Hours later, another text arrived. Terrence said he was coming home early. His flight had been changed to October 10th. No explanation was given. His father responded warmly, happy to hear it. There was no reply. Later, Raw TV would say Terrence told them he needed to leave early because his mother was having surgery. That was not true. His mother was fine. Why the early flight change? Why the false explanation about his mother's surgery? The next day, October 5th, the crew drove into the mountains near the Penman mine to film. What happened that evening is known only through the words of witnesses. According to multiple accounts given to law enforcement, the crew wrapped for the day as daylight faded. Terrence was speaking with a local woman who was assisting with transportation. At some point, he said he needed to use the bathroom and stepped away. Moments later, witnesses said, Terrence walked along the edge of the road, past a manager sitting in a vehicle, and then, without warning, ran. Not stumbled, not slipped. Ran. Down a steep embankment, into dense forest, toward gathering darkness. One witness described it as running like a hare. Another claimed he jumped off a 10-foot drop, landed on his feet, and continued running at full speed. Others said his clothes were torn and bloody. No one could catch him. And then, he was gone. The terrain he ran into was unforgiving. Thick brush, large trees, rocks, steep grades. The kind of place where moving quickly is difficult even in daylight. At night, it becomes hostile. Crew members chased him briefly, then lost sight. Authorities were called. By the time daylight returned to the mountains on October 6th, the area where Terrence Woods Jr. was last seen had already gone quiet. Not calm, quiet in the way places do when something has already gone wrong. Deputies arrived first, followed by volunteer searchers, Forest Service personnel, and trained dog handlers. The initial focus centered on the embankment, a steep, brush-choked slope Terrence was reported to have run down, dropping away from the road near the Penman mine. Search dogs were deployed within hours. They were brought directly to the spot where witnesses said Terrence disappeared into the trees. Handlers expected at least a partial scent trail, even a confused one. Human scent lingers. It clings to brush, soil, clothing fibers. But the dogs did not alert. They circled. They searched outward. They doubled back. Nothing. No clear track led downhill. No trail veered into the forest. No scent drifted toward water or road. It was as if Terrence's movement stopped abruptly. Not faded, but ended. Helicopters were brought in as the morning progressed. Thermal imaging swept across ravines, tree lines, and open cuts in the forest. Infrared sensors scanned for residual body heat. Again, nothing. By midday, ground teams expanded outward in grids. Volunteers formed lines, moving shoulder to shoulder through dense undergrowth. Searchers marked every disturbed patch of soil, every broken branch, every place a body could fall, wedge, or hide. They found animal tracks. They found old debris. They found nothing belonging to Terrence Woods Jr. As the hours passed, attention shifted toward environmental hazards. The Penman mine complex included abandoned shafts, ventilation holes, and partially collapsed tunnels. Some documented, others not. These features can be concealed beneath brush, leaves, or loose soil. But even here, nothing surfaced. No disturbed ground, no scuff marks, no radio, no clothing. By evening, the search radius widened again. Still nothing. Veteran searchers later acknowledged something quietly among themselves, something not written into official reports. This did not behave like a typical wilderness disappearance. In most cases, panic leaves patterns. Here, there were none. After 6 days of searching, the operation was scaled back. Officially, no foul play was suspected. Terrence's parents were flown to Idaho by Raw TV 3 days after the disappearance. When they arrived at the sheriff's office, they expected to meet the full crew who had been with their son. Most of them were gone. The production had already moved on to Oregon. A Raw TV spokesperson later stated the crew remained until searches concluded, then continued filming elsewhere. Terrence's father remembers something else. He says that when a producer first called to report his son missing, and again when they spoke in person, the conversation began not with concern, but with criticism. Claims that Terrence had been distracted, that he struggled with tasks, that he was inexperienced. Why describe him as unstable only after he vanished? Those descriptions directly contradicted years of professional feedback. Others noticed the same shift. Friends, professors, mentors, people who knew Terrence well, said the behavior described did not match the man they knew. He was not impulsive, not reckless, not prone to emotional breakdowns. He planned, he measured. He also had a prior pelvic injury that made running difficult. Another detail troubled his family. Terrence's hotel room was never searched. His worn clothing was missing. The only item showing signs of use was a pair of dress shoes, muddy, sealed inside a plastic bag. The clothes that should have accompanied them were gone. Cell phone records were never obtained. Phone pings were never requested. The abandoned mine itself was never thoroughly searched. And despite the size of the crew, no video footage surfaced showing Terrence in Idaho. Only eyewitness testimony. In the months that followed, the family pushed for answers. Questions multiplied. Inconsistencies surfaced. The timeline shifted depending on who was asked. Eventually, the FBI was contacted. Federal authorities reviewed aspects of the case. Their involvement, however, was limited, advisory rather than operational. Jurisdiction remained with Idaho County. No federal takeover occurred. No public report followed. This is not unusual. Federal agencies often step in quietly, assess whether thresholds are met, then step back if no immediate federal crime can be established. In this case, the absence of physical evidence cut both ways. No proof of foul play meant no clear federal mandate, but no proof of accident meant nothing could be closed. The result was a familiar dead zone, a case suspended between agencies, neither fully active nor formally concluded. Requests for records were denied. Crew member names were not released. Cell phone data was never publicly produced. Hotel rooms were never examined. And the production company, Raw TV, moved on. For Terrence's family, this absence of movement became its own form of evidence. Not proof of guilt, but proof of unanswered questions. Another detail lingers quietly in the background of this case, one that rarely appears in official summaries, but unsettles those who notice it. Another disappearance lingers quietly in the background of Terrence Woods Jr.'s case, rarely mentioned in official summaries, seldom explored in depth, yet impossible to ignore once noticed. Her name was Connie Johnson. Connie Johnson was 76 years old. She was not inexperienced. She was not reckless. She was not unfamiliar with Idaho's backcountry. By all available accounts, she was capable, independent, and comfortable navigating remote terrain. Someone who had spent years traveling and hiking throughout the region. On October 2nd, 2018, just 3 days before Terrence Woods Jr. vanished, Connie Johnson went missing near the Salmon River in central Idaho. The location was approximately 60 miles from where the Raw TV production crew was filming near the Penman mine. In wilderness terms, that distance is negligible. The terrain between the Salmon River corridor and Elk City is rugged, sparsely populated, and threaded with old trails, canyons, and abandoned mining infrastructure. It is the same ecosystem, the same wilderness system, the same kind of land. Search efforts for Connie Johnson began quickly. Ground teams were deployed, dogs were brought in, aerial searches were conducted. The response mirrored the early stages of Terrence's search in scale and urgency. The results mirrored it as well. Nothing was found. No clothing, no gear, no remains, no confirmed direction of travel, no explanation. Authorities never publicly connected the two cases. On paper, they appeared unrelated. Different ages, different last seen circumstances, different narratives. There was no suggestion of foul play in either disappearance. No evidence that either individual encountered another person. But timing matters. So does proximity. Two people vanished in the same region of Idaho within the same week. Both disappeared into rugged wilderness. Both left behind no physical trace. Both searches ended without answers. For those familiar with wilderness disappearance patterns, this overlap raises uncomfortable questions. Search and rescue professionals acknowledge, often off the record, that Idaho has a long history of cases where individuals vanish in ways that defy conventional explanation. Cases where extensive searches yield nothing. Cases where scent trails fail. Cases where experienced hikers, hunters, or residents disappear in terrain they knew well. Locals sometimes speak quietly about certain areas, places where people go missing more often than statistics should allow, places where the land seems to behave differently, where navigation fails, where people are not found. The region surrounding the Salmon River, Elk City, and the Penman Mine has long been considered one of those places. Abandoned mines dot the landscape, some marked, many forgotten. Deep shafts and ventilation tunnels can be concealed beneath brush and leaf litter, capable of swallowing a person without sound or visible disturbance. In some cases, even falling debris leaves no surface sign. But mine-related accidents do not explain everything. They do not explain why search dogs fail to detect scent at last seen locations. They do not explain why no debris, no equipment, no clothing ever surfaces. They do not explain why aerial thermal scans detect nothing, not even remnants. And they do not explain why, in multiple cases, the disappearance itself is marked by suddenness and silence. Connie Johnson was never found. Her case remains unresolved. And while there is no evidence tying her disappearance to Terrence Woods Jr., the timing is difficult to ignore. For Terrence's family, it reinforced a growing fear that his disappearance was not an isolated incident, but part of something larger, a pattern, a region where answers fail to surface. In the wilderness of central Idaho, two people vanished within days of each other. Neither has been brought home. Over time, theories began to form on Reddit, YouTube, and true crime forums regarding Terrence Woods Jr. In most wilderness disappearances, something remains behind. A shoe, a scrap of fabric, a scent trail that fades into nothing. Here, there was none of that. Not where witnesses said he ran, and not anywhere else. That absence has given rise to theories. Some grounded, some disturbing, some that sound implausible until they are examined against what little evidence actually exists. The first theory is the one authorities quietly favor: a sudden psychological break. Supporters of this explanation point to the claims made by the production crew, that Terrence appeared distracted, overwhelmed, possibly anxious earlier that day. That something internal snapped, triggering a fight-or-flight response so intense that he fled without regard for danger. But this theory raises immediate problems. Terrence had no documented history of mental illness, no record of panic attacks, no reports of instability from colleagues prior to his disappearance. Not in London, not in Maryland, not during the early days of the shoot. Even the text messages he sent to his father just hours before the incident showed no signs of distress. More importantly, panic alone does not explain the total absence of physical evidence. Experienced searchers note that even people in extreme psychological distress leave traces. Terrence left nothing. The second theory is exposure and environmental death, the wilderness explanation. Idaho County is unforgiving terrain. Steep slopes, dense forest, hidden mine shafts, predators, weather that can turn lethal overnight. A man running blindly could fall, be injured, or become trapped in a place no searcher would think to look. There is precedent for this. Search teams admit that people can be missed, even after extensive operations. Bodies are sometimes found years later, yards from where teams walked. But again, this theory struggles against the same wall. Search dogs did not pick up a scent. Helicopters with infrared detected nothing. No clothing surfaced. No remains. No sign of scavenging. And Terrence's physical limitations, including a prior pelvic injury, make the reported speed and agility difficult to reconcile. Then there is the third theory, that Terrence never ran at all. This idea has gained quiet traction among those who have studied the inconsistencies. Witness statements varied in critical ways. Who saw him first, how far he ran, whether he jumped, whether he was injured, how long it took before authorities were contacted. Some accounts describe blood. Others do not. Some say he was emotional. Others say nothing unusual happened until the moment he ran. If Terrence did not flee on his own, if something else happened before that moment, then the narrative given to investigators becomes a reconstruction, not a report. This theory does not accuse any individual outright, but it questions whether the full truth was ever known, even among those present. Why did the crew leave Idaho so quickly? Why were the parents unable to speak with everyone who was there? Why was criticism of Terrence's job performance emphasized immediately before his safety? Then comes the theory his father believes, that whatever happened to Terrence did not begin in Idaho. This theory hinges on timing. Terrence changed his return flight before he disappeared. He offered a false explanation to his employer. He told his father he was coming home early, but did not say why. To his father, this suggests Terrence wanted out, not gradually, immediately. The implication is unsettling, that Terrence may have seen, heard, or learned something serious enough to make him want to leave a major production job without notice. What that something could have been remains unknown. No evidence supports this theory, but no evidence disproves it either. Then there are the theories that venture further into the unknown, that Terrence witnessed something on set he wasn't meant to see, that he refused to participate. That fear, not confusion, drove him to run. That he didn't run at all. That the story began earlier, elsewhere, and the Idaho film location became a convenient endpoint. There is also the pattern. Men vanishing in rugged terrain without trace. Sudden flight behavior. Missing evidence. Cases where experienced hikers, hunters, or workers disappear in ways that defy logic. Search and rescue professionals acknowledge a phenomenon they cannot fully explain. Cases where individuals flee from perceived threats that leave no physical source. Sometimes attributed to panic, sometimes to environmental disorientation, sometimes left unexplained. And then there are the theories people hesitate to voice aloud. That Terrence encountered something in the wilderness, human or otherwise, that caused an immediate flight response. That he crossed into an area where tracking failed, not because nothing happened, but because something removed him from the equation entirely. These theories are often dismissed, but they persist, because years later, there is still no body, no evidence, no closure. Terrence Woods Jr. did not simply disappear. He vanished under circumstances that refused to settle into certainty. There is another possibility, quieter, more ordinary, that has often been overlooked. Terrence Woods Jr. told those around him that he needed to use the bathroom. There were no portable restroom facilities at the filming site. No toilets, no privacy structures, only forest, brush, and uneven ground. In a remote production setting, stepping away briefly for privacy would not have been unusual. It would not have raised alarms. It would not have required explanation. If Terrence was experiencing sudden stomach distress, food poisoning, dehydration, anxiety-induced nausea, or a reaction to something he ate earlier that day, urgency alone could explain why he moved quickly, why he sprinted down the steep embankment, why he left equipment behind, and why he sought distance rather than help. Embarrassment can be a powerful motivator. So can the need for privacy. In this scenario, Terrence may not have intended to go far at all. He may have simply walked until he felt out of sight, into terrain he did not know well. And that is where the explanation begins to fracture. Dense brush can disorient. Slopes steepen without warning. The forest does not look the same when viewed from inside it. If Terrence attempted to return and realized he was disoriented, even briefly, panic would not indicate psychological collapse. It would be instinct. Running uphill, running downhill, running toward what looked open, not what was safe. A fall, a concealed mine shaft, a startled predator at close range, a head injury that silenced movement and sound. Each of these possibilities exists in that landscape, and yet the same problem remains. Even accidents leave evidence. Even panic leaves traces. Even brief disorientation leaves a path. Search dogs found no scent. Searchers found no disturbance. The land gave nothing back, which raises the question that refuses to go away. Did Terrence step away briefly and then never make it back? Or did something happen in that gap? Something never fully seen, never fully said, that altered the story before it was ever told. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give it a like, a comment, and maybe a share. But if you didn't like the story, maybe share it with someone you don't like. In any case, I'm glad you stuck around to the end.